and I think you should be good to go.
All right. Well, let me get a little thing up in the corner there. So we're online?
Yes, sir.
All right. Um, let's call the August 18th, 2025 Public Works Committee meeting in order. And let's all observe a moment of silence. And as we put ourselves in the presence of the Lord, let's pray for peace in Ukraine, the Middle East, and other trouble areas around the world. Thank you. Chair, entertain a motion for approval of the minutes for July 14th Public Works meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Probably moving seconded. Any questions on those minutes? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. We're going, with the pleasure of the committee, we're going to advance the items on the K on the agenda, take it out of order. I guess we need a motion to take them out of order. The items on the miscellaneous business, K1 through 5.
I'd move for approval, and this is,
All right. All in favor of making an adjustment to the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Item K1, Mr. Mayor, you're up.
all right, I'm gonna share my screen and give you all a brief presentation. I appreciate, Chairman, you allowing me to jump ahead. Just for those of you, I'm gonna have to drop early to go to the Housing Authority Board meeting tonight. So a lot of presentations going on, but appreciate y'all's patience. Let me share here. Sure y'all can see that. We're good?
Not yet.
Let's see.
Okay, we got it.
You got it? All right. Let me click on this. There we go. Okay, so the gist of today's presentation, and I'm going to try and be pretty brief, but is to give you all and the public, for that matter, an update on where things stand with our partnership with the Army Corps of Engineers. Just brief history. You all know that we've been talking about water for a while now. I'll give kudos to my predecessor for really bringing this conversation to the forefront, beginning with the Dutch dialogues back in 2017-18. We've been working away on a variety of different fronts addressing water in and around the Low Country and Charleston. One of the biggest initiatives that we have, as you all are well aware, is our partnership with the Army Corps of Engineers. And of course, that became initially started with the perimeter protection analysis. Why are we looking at that? Because again, this is charts that you all have seen before, but you just look at how much the annual flooding events and number of flood days every year have been rapidly increasing over the past several years. So there's urgency to this that I think you all are very much well aware of. But when it came to the Army Corps and the perimeter protection, there were, as you all know, a lot of concerns. And I've tried to break those concerns down into 10 general points. And we're going to go through each one of these on what the concern was, as well as where we are to date on trying to solve for that. And then we're going to end the presentation with an ask on how to, for this committee to recommend approval on some paths forward for full council. So again, when it comes to the concerns we had with the initial partnership with the Army Corps, particularly around the perimeter protection, design was first and foremost. When you looked at what the Army was designing, you had examples of T-walls, you had examples of combo wall structures, basically huge pieces of infrastructure that would do a great job on protecting us against storm surge, but aren't exactly the most attractive and viable. One of the most famous pictures that really caught my eye initially was this one at the bend at Lockwood, which was the T-wall here. And I've always appreciated this guy's face here, wondering, seems to be asking, like, what the hell is this thing? But, there was real cause for concern. There was real cause for concern. So what is our solution to this? Well, pretty simple. Instead of having a T-wall, let's marry form and function. We have an example of that, the battery, which has been there for almost 200 years now. Let's look at figuring out how to take that exact design and that amenity that people love and extend it. And that is the basis and foundation, if you will, for our design moving forward. So, this is exciting. It's very viable. I mean, there are structural elements, obviously, designed into this that I think would allow for the same level of protection. But there are a few nuances, like, for example, in order to get from a flood elevation of 9, which is where these people's feet are, to a 12, you'd have to put, in the case of a 4 or 5 category storm coming for a direct hit, you'd have to install panels along the battery to protect against that higher level. So a little bit more of an operational sacrifice, but for the 99.9% of the time that this piece of infrastructure would be utilized, you would have open access to the water versus a wall. Alignment was another issue. Number 2, this is an example of a gate. In this case, it's a railroad gate in New Orleans. But the way the Corps originally laid out the alignment of the perimeter protection on the peninsula, you can see it's this red line here. It runs down Lockwood, crosses it 6 times, as well as other areas of the city. And if you're going to have a crossing of the road, you have to have these massive gates in. So again, that to us was a real problem in terms of the alignment, not to mention that a lot of areas like the International African American Museum, the aquarium, they were all on the outside of the wall or perimeter. So wanted to be able to protect as much as we could, but also, again, marry form and function. Another problem is connectivity. This is kind of obvious. This is an example of where they had the wall set up. This is looking at Waterfront Park, and just imagine that being closed and not being able to see the water. Again, what we're trying to do is this, which is connect all of these different access points between the low line, the Arc Bridge, even the bridge coming over the Ravenel Bridge, making, in essence, a long linear park that follows what Joe Riley talked about in the 1980s of having public access all the way along the waterfront, with the one exception of being Columbus Terminal. So we want to open up connectivity versus close it down. 4th issue we had was coordination with other major events. The Arc Bridge is a great example. We've talked about this when we've discussed that, where the Arc Bridge landing on the peninsula didn't really account for the perimeter protection coming through or the battery extension. So we've been able to marry that up. But it's not just the Arc Bridge, it's everything from renovations, future renovations to the Joe, to Union Pier, to the low line. All of these things we want to think about holistically and how they work together. So what we've done on that is, we've really taken a deep dive on this. And I've got to give real props on a variety of fronts to staff for all the hard work that they've been working on. And a lot of the folks that are on this call have just done a phenomenal job on really digging into the details so that, we're not having to rebuild something when we put this piece of infrastructure in. 5th issue is, this original Army Corps plan, as you all recall, was really just for storm surge, meaning hurricanes. I don't have to tell y'all that 99.9% of the time we deal with flooding, there ain't a hurricane. It is tidal, it is stormwater, it is backed up drains, you name it. So we need to, wanted to make sure that we could, expand this to where everything kind of connects together. All of our initiatives, both on and off the peninsula, would work together. And so what we did here, this is one example of the new proposed alignment where, and this is directly out of the water plan, where we take the knee wall concept that is being proposed on Lockwood, and if you have the battery running proud of the street there, that one eliminates the gates, but also acts in conjunction with daily flooding, where you could have tidal gates, you would have tidal gates on this battery, and it creates another retention area, much like Long Lake and Colonial Lake serve as. So this would really help and add a lot of volume to our stormwater runoff. So again, integration is something that we're really focused on, and again, trying to think holistically. The sixth concern on the original Army Corps partnership was that it's parochial. It was really just peninsula specific, and we weren't really talking about the other flooding needs really across the entire city. And it floods on Daniel Island, it floods on James Island, it floods on Johns Island, floods West Ashley. So we needed to take a more holistic approach. And that was probably one of the biggest concerns, as I know most council members had, that making sure that this wasn't peninsula specific. So while the perimeter protection is a particular program with the Army Corps that has a specific scope, we were, as you all are well aware, able to expand our relationship and partnership with the Army Corps, bringing an additional tidal and inland flooding relationship and partnership, which has done some pretty incredible things, or is in the process of doing some pretty incredible things in conjunction with our water plan, and in conjunction with all the hard work that Matt Fountain and his team do or have been doing for a while now on the other initiatives. And I just threw a few of these major drainage initiatives that are being worked on across the entire city and are not just, as mentioned, peninsula specific. Barbary Woods, Oak Forest, the Windermere Drainage Project, Central Park Drainage Project. All of these things are incredible initiatives that help us address flooding across the entire city. But back to the perimeter protection, since we are pretty far down the road with the Army Corps on this, having started these initial dialogues, I think in 2021 maybe. One big problem that I had was that the initial PED proposed designing the first phase of the project, which is from the low battery here, the western alignment. And they anticipated that design drawings for that phase, just that phase, to cost about $20 million, which is a really high number in my mind. But that would get us full and complete construction drawings. Well, the heartburn that I had with that was that what do you do with 100% drawings on 1/3 of a project? And so if we're going to spend money, in this case, upwards of 20 million, 13 would come from the Army Corps and 7 ultimately would come from the city. I think you should look at it more holistically. So the proposal that I'm going up, I'm hoping Councilman Sequins can join me in meeting with the head of the Army Corps in a week or two, September 5th, I think, in DC, is to ask them, instead of doing that, if we can take the $20 million and do 30% drawings on 100% of the alignment. So same, we would figure out the alignment, but we would then be in a place we can know exactly where the alignment would be for the perimeter protection or the battery extension. And we could actually, in all likelihood, go out to a design build process versus just having construction drawings and taking it to the highest bidder. So,
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, Councilman
I
Seekey.
don't, yeah, I don't have the visual, so I'm just sort of listening.
okay.
So we're talking about doing this pre-PED?
No, this would be part of PED. This would be part of PED.
It would be part of PED, so would it be on a reimbursement basis? How would
I'll get to that. I'll get to that at the end. I just kind of wanted to go through kind of what we're looking at.
okay, I'm not looking at anything, I'm just listening.
We'll send you the package too.
Okay.
But again, this I do think is an important point though, because we really need to understand if we're talking about this critical piece of infrastructure that'll protect the peninsula for the next 150 years. We need to look at it holistically and not phase by phase. And again, it's a lot of money that we're putting towards this. And I want to be prudent about that and responsible about that. Another issue we had, and this is probably something you often hear with the Army Corps, is the design agreement in particular was very, very lopsided for the Army Corps, even though, they're giving 65% of the funds. They were getting, I would argue, more than 65% of the control. And so we've worked really hard over the past, several months, going back and forth with various departments to get to a place where it isn't going to be even, but the scales will be slightly better in our favor. We've also worked with the federal delegation, make sure that the Army Corps, in a worst case scenario, couldn't do something to a waterfront that we weren't in favor of. So giving up and watching that control was something we've been working very hard with them on. And again, it's one of these deals, folks, where they would never do that or they would never do that. Well, that's not exactly what the document says. So, there's gonna be a little bit of a leap of faith here, but I feel like we're getting to a very good place on the design agreement with the Army Corps to allow us to move forward. The schedule too, it was something that this is the Army Corps schedule, and I don't really follow it, to be honest with you, but going back to the point where I'd like to design get to 30% drawings, so we could have the opportunity to go to design build. I think that would actually expedite this project in its schedule, and probably cut off years of time. So I'm pretty focused on that part, and we can get into more detail on that if you'd like. But again, schedule, one of the big issues there is we don't have this chart on here. Or there it is. Time is money, so the longer things take, I just threw 526 in here as an example on what it was originally projected to cost back in 2009 and where it ended up in 2022. And I don't have to tell you all that numbers are rising. And when you complement that with the fact that we're flooding more and more frequently, again, it goes back to an urgency on timing to figure out how we can get this thing expedited, which is, as you well are aware, not always easy when it comes to federal government. Finally, these are kind of some of the issues, by the way, that I did want to address or want to make sure not just Peninsula, but all these other initiatives. We're looking at a 10-year horizon to get these things done. It's a lot of things that we're already working on, but it's also things that are in the water plan, like the Blue Crescent, and some of the other initiatives. But the goal here would be to have the entire battery extension, all three phases around the peninsula, plus the Wagner Terra and Rosemont work to be completed in 2030 by 2035. Again, this was design build. I've talked a little bit about that in order to expedite. Now,
Mayor, a question on, is it possible to do the nature-based solutions either at the same time or prior to the hard construction pieces of this project?
I'm sorry, the first, is it possible to do that?
Can you start on the nature-based, let's say for
Yeah.
Wagner Terrace, and at the same time doing the battery extension?
Yes, the answer to that, I think, is we would be looking at, I want to look at this holistically, and not just look at a piece here and a piece there. And the good news is, and this is where I want to be, you know, I think this is really exciting, is that, you know, we took some of our initial money, as y'all are aware, before that we had designed or y'all had set aside for PED. And we had Black and Veatch do a study on the western alignment and do a cost comparison going from the, you know, heavy civil gates, wall, etc. design and alignment to the battery extension, with the alignment off of Lockwood and along the water. And they came back with a price that was within 5% of where the Army Corps price was. So a much better product for basically the same price, which, as you all will recall, for the perimeter protection in aggregate was 1.3 billion. Now we would have to fund 455,000 or 455 million of that, which would be local funds. Of course, the city doesn't have that, but I do think that between solicitations to the state and also potentially to as part of the transportation sales tax, which does allow for resiliency, and now that 526 is not part of it, there is potentially more funding available for flooding relief. And it's not just the peninsula and this, but also these other initiatives that have been defined by the water plan. So we really need to look at this holistically, and we've got to be very organized as we go into next year when the county starts setting up what will be on the transportation sales tax initiative. We got to be organized, and we've got to be thoughtful, and we've got to be tight on our numbers. So I feel like having a 30% plan on the peninsula of the entire thing, along with these other initiatives defined in the water plan and projects that we're working on with just the stormwater department in terms of capital projects, we can put a pretty compelling package together on what we need funding that I think will be very popular across the entire city, from Rosemont to James Island to outer West Ashland. So those were the 10 original issues and the 10 potential solutions. What I'm here to ask for today is for this committee's approval to move forward with the design agreement, with the understanding that if we don't like what the Corps ends up coming up with in partnership with us, that we don't have to move forward after the design phase is done. But between the funding that we've allocated for the battery extension partnership and the tidal and inland flooding, we have a decent amount of money left in the coffers. But in aggregate, this is going to cost $10 million. We've already allocated $4 million. So over the next 2 years, in 26 and 27, this council would need to approve approximately $3 million a year in 26 and 27 to get this, the Peninsula Initiative, the battery extension, but also the tidal and inland flooding studies done in a place where we can really start moving dirt. So that's what the general ask is. We have more specifics here it's on this agenda, which is to execute the design agreement, which we've been back and forth. Before we sign it, I want to have that meeting in Washington. But then also taking almost $2 million for Black and Beach to do what they've done on the western alignment on the eastern side for the peninsula, which will then set the alignment and that we're all in agreement. And part of the funding too, 500,000 would go to the Corps to approve our western alignment. And the good news is that if for some reason, and I don't foresee this happening, but if for some reason that the Army Corps is like, after spending that 500, they are moving in a different direction in terms of design or alignment that what we've proposed, I think that would be a good time to pull the plug. So we don't want to spend more money, throw good money after bad if we're not in agreement.
Question there on that point. But would that affect our reimbursement from the Army Corps if we had to pull the plug? How would that work?
So I think we would be like, it's kind of a timing thing, Councilman Gregory, that we'd have to work through. But we've spent $745,000 with Black and Beach for the western alignment. The $500,000 would get us through the end of this year with the Army Corps to kind of review that western alignment. And then the Black and Beach would start now, but go almost through 2026. So not all of those funds would be spent. And so to answer your question, in a worst case scenario, if for some reason we do not agree with the Army Corps, we would have the sunk cost of 745,000 plus the 500,000 plus some portion of that 1.9 that will be funded between now and when we would pull the plug. Now that said, it's sunk costs, but the Army Corps is not the only funding source from the federal government. And so we will have good drawings and, engineering calculations that we can use that aren't worth nothing. Let me put it that way. Right. And so, there is a risk here, guys. There's certainly a risk, but when you start looking at the time and our flooding, I think it's a risk worth taking. And then the last, I'm sorry, this last approval here is for the 1.1, and that is for the tidal and inland flooding. We actually already appropriated that in this year's budget. So just authorizing moving forward on the next phase of the tidal and inland flooding for the flooding across the entire city. So those are the four motions that I'd like to get this committee to approve, or what would you be? You would be recommending approval to Ways and Means, and that would come up in the September meeting, and second and third reading would be at the end of September. So that's kind of the general timeline. With that, I know that's a lot to kind of all take in, but I did want to get all that out a little. It's something, again, Kaylin, Josh, Dale Morris, when he was still here, Logan, there's just been so many people, planning department, Matt, been a lot of hands on this at the city. I'd be remiss if I didn't give them a shout out for a lot of hard work that's been going on behind the scenes over the past really year and a half. So we're in a clear path forward. If you all are in general agreement, there's going to be twists and turns, I'm sure, but I think it's time, and we're in a place where I think it's exciting. I think it's given us direction. It's viable. It's doable. It is good marriage of form and function. And I'm hoping that you all will support moving forward. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it over to you for any questions or comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I recognize anybody else, let me ask this. On this trip to the Corps at Washington, I would like to attend. And I'd like also want to ask, we got talent around, engineering talent around our council table. I see Councilman Gregg has his hand up. I'm wondering whether he would be interested in attending, and then obviously Mr. Fountain. This kind of reminds me of some years ago we were about to during the last BRAC realignment, we were about to lose SPAWAR at the time it was called, up on the Naval Weapons Station, in addition to the Air Force Base. SPAWAR at that time contributed over $2 billion economic impact to this region. It would have had a big hit if that had been consolidated. Long story short, we had a pretty big important trip to the Pentagon, and I think it mattered. The chamber put together a group to go and we took an admiral and a 3-star general to go and sit down and talk with the high brass at the Pentagon. Long story short, we came up with Joint Base Charleston and were able to save those installations. Obviously, this is very important for the city of Charleston. Just in case any questions were to come up, it'd be good to have a couple of our engineering minds around the table. So that's why I throw that out.
The more the merrier. So if any council member wants to attend, I think that would be very helpful. This is the head of the Army Corps of Engineers.
Right.
And he's excited to meet with us. So we've got Kayla, myself, I think Josh Martin, and Councilman Seekings, who are planning on coming, because I talked to Councilman Seekings about it this morning. If anyone else would like to be there, and I think to your point, we'll bring some folks from the stormwater department as well and capital projects. And love to have as many minds in the room as possible.
Great. Councilman Gray, especially after I volunteered your time. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mayor, I have a question on the capital cost. So if you could go back, I mean, the revised capital cost number right now is at 1.3 billion. Is that the
Right.
Was that updated because the Army Corps gave us a $1.1 billion number, I think, in 2022, if memory serves. So that 1.3 is an updated cost number?
Yeah, I mean, that was from the original PED agreement. So it's moved around a little bit. I think we have an updated number that is at 1.1, but for the purpose of this, I wanted to manage expectations and put the outside number on there.
So my hang up, I guess, and where I'll start here is, this was a number that was created in 2022 that wasn't adjusted for inflation. And as you well know, and as you showed that graph, we've seen a pretty precipitous rise in construction cost inflation over the last 3 years, and thankfully maybe that's subsiding a little bit. But when we get around to building this thing in 2020, 2030, 2032, whenever the year is, I mean, it's well within the possibility that we're in a 1.7, $1.8 billion window. And I guess so. My question is, we've shown this number, but my challenge or my problem with the Army Corps of Engineers number is that it's based in 2022.
Well, to your end, I think I can answer that question in that we really dug in with Black and Veatch, and we asked them to update it and validate where it might be, because we had the similar concerns about just things costing significantly more. And in terms of, we actually are ending up saving a decent amount of money by going offshore. And that's because of the gates and some of these other very expensive items. So we do have validation that the numbers are in keeping with where they were back in 2003 or 4 years ago. Now, will they go up? Yeah, I mean, and there is some inflation, but probably not what we've seen year over year. But what we really need to do is get to, again, this 30% set of drawings so that we can, I don't want to go all the way through with CDs. I want to go to this, through design development drawings, know where the alignment is, know what the design is, and then get hard pricing on it or get good pricing on it based on those. And then we're going to have to make a call. And if it's 1.7, the Corps is picking up 65% of it. So that's good. But it's still, I hear you that, that 455 is a pretty daunting number. I respect that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess somebody's got a bad echo, but when we talk about throwing good money after bad, if the number is 1.7 trillion and we're going to end up having to contribute 595 million and we don't have a solid plan in place, and we've thrown a solid plan in place, $595 million, and we've kind of thrown good money after bad. So I guess my ask would be, like, if I could sit down with you at some point in the near future and talk about what our funding plan is to come up with this number.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, we've been rolling up our sleeves on that, and but again, if you're gonna take this to the state, or you're gonna take this to as part of the TST, you need something that you can sell. You need people to see what this can and will be, versus here's a red line on a piece of paper, right? I mean, and a picture of a concrete T-wall. Nobody's excited about that. But if it's a good marriage of form and function, can help with daily flooding as well as storm surge, I think there's a real path forward here. So, but yeah, glad to sit down with you. Anyone else for that matter, and walk you through details on what we've been looking into. So, Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I do have to run, or there's Councilman Seekings, but I've got about 5-10 minutes before I have to go to the Housing Authority and give them a presentation, but happy to answer any additional questions.
Mayor, in all due respect, I'm probably going to vote nay until I get further information on it. Unfortunately, I wasn't privy to the presentation, and I too would like to talk to you a little more for the September 19th. Okay?
Okay. Let me recognize Councilman Seekings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mayor, for the presentation. And thank you, Councilmember Gregg, for asking that question, because I think it's important to know that this is heading towards a large-scale project. But in order to sort of figure out what this is going to cost us, we have to start somewhere, and this is the place to start. And that is deciding and agreeing on an alignment and a design before you can even think about the cost if you do it in 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 phases. As you all know, I've been somewhat of a skeptic of the manner in which the Army Corps has approached this. I think that the approach of sussing out the alignment and the design for what's really an ante of about $500,000 going forward, and also funding Black and Veatch to sort of think this through so we're ready with the Army Corps to show them what's acceptable to us, is going to break the logjam that we've now been in, Mr. Mayor. You mentioned 2021. It's been a lot longer than that. We've been at this since 2019. I think my first notes are 2018. So I think I would move to authorize the mayor to move forward with these and bring it back to council and not slow things down. One of our biggest enemy on all this right now is the logjam that we've been in for a really long time. I mean, this 3x3 study was originally 3 years and $3 million and 3 levels of review. We're into year 6. They spent way more than $3 million, and we're not even anywhere near review because we don't have an alignment and a plan. And at some point, we're going to have to pull the trigger on perimeter protection, and whether it's with the Army Corps or not, the only way to find that out is to sign this design agreement, have the off-ramp that the mayor has pointed out very clearly, which would be at the end of 2025 going into 2026. So our ante for a billions of dollar project that we can get out of at $500,000 is worth the move, and I would support it, recognizing that there's a long way to go. And the alignment, Mr. Chairman, I do believe will dictate the design. So once we've agreed on the alignment, we're going to know what we're getting anyway. And we've got Black and Veatch working on it. So I think holding this up and slowing this down would sort of further our challenges with getting this project either moving forward or sending it in a different direction and looking for different funding. We need to find out where we are, and this is the way to do it. So I move for approval of all four, bring it to council.
So
with the understanding there's going to be a meeting with the engineers in between now and when we get to city council. And this message that this committee is going to put forward will be delivered to the Army Corps, and they'll hear it loud and clear. And the mayor didn't mention it, but the Army Corps has some reasons to partner with us and listen to us because this funds them. We're really actually opening the spigot for them to be able to do something that's to our advantage. And if they say no, better to know now than later. So that's my spiel, and it's a little different than it was 6 years ago because I think we've come a lot further than we've ever been before.
Any other council members to be recognized? I can't see everybody, so please unmute yourselves, be recognized.
I just second the motion that Councilman Seekings made.
Okay, probably moved and seconded. Two things I would add, and all council, I always come up with these war stories, but doing half-cent sales tax for the Ravenel Bridge that we all enjoy. Before it passed, it failed. And God bless, he's now passed on, but Harry Hallman was the mayor of Mount Pleasant at the time. And we had 4 lanes on this new bridge coming down into 2 lanes into Mount Pleasant. And he said, that would create havoc. And he told his people over there, they had a plan, by the way. And their plan was what we see today. Johnny Dodds being expanded with frontage roads and a flyover at Bowman Road. It didn't include the flyover at Bowman Road. So Harry Hallman instructed his people over there not to vote for it, and the half-cent sales tax didn't pass. Okay, and a $600 million bridge didn't get built until 2 years later, when people came to their thoughts and wisdom, and now we see the flyover at Bowman Road. So to have a plan to be able to go back to, as a matter of fact, when Harry Hallman and his folk went back to the county with half-cent sales tax request after having failed, including the $150 million for the Bowman Road flyover, made a whole lot of sense. So if we're going to be able to go and make a pitch to county council for regional dollars to help out with this, we need more definitions on a plan. So I would respectfully ask additional information, get to Councilman Gregory. But without a plan, it's going to be very, very difficult to go regionally to get monies. So for those reasons, I'm going to support this. Any input as we move forward with this? All minds being in the same place, I'll call the question. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Abstain. Councilmember Waring,
Yes.
Councilwoman abstaining.
You kind of
You're
blanked
abstaining.
out. Is this Council Lady Parker?
Yes.
Okay. You want to be recognized?
Yeah, I'm just abstaining.
Oh, okay, you abstain.
I just-
Okay. Please let the record show that Council Lady Parker abstains.
Thank you. I need to review the material as well. Thank
I
you.
understand. There's a lot of information.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. If I may, I apologize, but I've got to head out. Appreciate everybody's vote and hearing us out, and I will get all this information to everybody, and we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right,
Thank
we
you.
go back to the top of the agenda. We go down to item E, acceptance and dedication of rights of way. Who's going to address that? E1 and E2?
Mr. Chairman, I can speak to it, I guess. I thought maybe Tim Keene would be on, but if he's not, I can speak to it.
Sure, that'd be fine.
Okay, so these are all, so E and F is what we're referring to. I can speak to F, which is the temporary encroachments for the Department of Public Service. Now, the Department of Development Services, all mostly fence and irrigation encroachments within drainage easements and right of ways. Nothing really too out of the ordinary for item F.
All right, good deal. Okay, what's the pleasure of the committee? Is there a motion for approval?
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Properly moved in second. Any more discussion on E1 or E2? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Now, we've got a lot of temporary encroachments, which is put on the agenda for information. Any questions on those or any unusual items on this one, Mr. Bucci?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
All right, pretty much standard. We go to item G1, request for encroachments. Are you gonna handle that too? I mean, G1?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. So these are 4 separate encroachments into an easement for roof overhangs, 18 inches, but they're 30 feet above the ground. They really shouldn't impede any maintenance within that drainage easement. It was communicated to the development team that it was previously approved, so we moved to get it approved.
Um,
Move for approval.
Properly moved. We doing one, or are we gonna do them as a?
Move to take items G1 through 4 together and for approval.
All right, is there a second to Councilman? Okay, probably
Second.
move the second. Any questions on G1 through 4? All in favor, would you please say aye?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? And that includes taking them as a group and approving all 4 items. Public service update D1. I don't really see anything. That's good news for us in most cases. I1, development of departmental services update. I1. You gonna handle that, Mr. Bucci?
Sure, yeah, I can handle this one as well. I did want to say, Mr. Chairman, for items E, I wasn't really speaking to the temporary construction easement. I'm not familiar with items E, so I don't know if there's someone else to speak to those. I was more referring to the temporary encroachments as well as the permanent encroachments. So I didn't know if you wanted to go back to item E and if there was someone else who could speak to those.
Mr. Fountain, are you on, Mr. Fountain, to address E1 or 2?
Mr. Chairman, I'm familiar with item E2. This is a stormwater item for easements for the MUSC pump station upfit project. We basically have been working with the MUSC legal department, the state legislature, clarify the kind of historical easements that were set up when the city took over the MUSC pump station. These are ready for acceptance by the city. They mostly just formalize and document for the Army Corps of Engineers the agreements that were in place and being operated under already.
Okay. Does that change anybody's vote after hearing that?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right, good. We'll move forward then. Thank you for the information, Mr. Fountain. Let's move on to J1, stormwater management update, Mr. Fountain.
Actually, that'll be me.
Mr. Bucci. All right, Mr.
Yes.
You're up.
Yeah. So this is, and I have Caroline Chanel as our floodplain manager as well to help answer questions, but it's an approval to accept the FEMA grant awards for the elevation of 3 historic properties downtown. The grant awards the amount of just over 870,000 with a local match 49,000, but that is to be covered by the property owner. It's my understanding that the city will have no actual
I saw
cost
that.
associated with this.
When I read that earlier, when the agenda came out, I think this is like one of the first times the match came from a property owner, which is, hey, that's good news.
Yes, for sure. But that's basically the gist of it, is just approving the grant. And like I said, I don't think there's any cost associated with the city. And Caroline Schnell, who's on the call, can help answer any questions.
All right, Ms. Snell, do you have anything to add to the conversation?
That's correct. The local cost share, if there are any local cost shares, it'd be coming from the property owner. So the city of Charleston would not be contributing financially to the elevation of these private homes.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, what's the pleasure of the committee? Do we have a motion?
Move for approval.
Properly
Second.
moved and seconded. Any discussion on I-1? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Stormwater management updates, continuing with J1.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So item J1 is the approval of construction contract for drainage outfall improvements and cleaning at Sandcroft Drive. This was a advertised, competitively low bid contract, amount of 163,398.66 with ES integrated.
All
This
right.
is one of our small project allocation projects, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with it. Listen, I would move approval, but I'm chairing it. So what's the pleasure of the committee?
Move for approval.
Properly and second. Hearing no discussion on this, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That happens to be in District 7, gentlemen and lady. J2, Future Street Drainage Improvement, order number 2. Mr. Fountain?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is approval of a change order with S.J. Hamel on our King and Uchi project. Basically, when we were doing some specialty install work with a subcontractor where we bring the force main under the interstate, where there's the kind of the above grade interstate, we found a brick arch structure in the ground that isn't on any surveys, had to investigate what that was functioning as, how it was draining. Turned out it was attempting to drain part of Ensign Homes' internal drainage system, likely unsuccessfully, as it was in pretty rough shape. So we had the contractor rework that area and then basically reconnect the existing Ensign Homes back into the wet well for the potential pump station. So this is a little bit of standby time for the specialty subcontractor that was doing the force main install and then the modification to the existing drainage system. Upside, it should provide significantly improved drainage to the internal road network within Ensign Homes as well.
It was actually a good find, man. Good.
So there's a brick arch tunnel that's not on any survey.
So I think, Councilman Gregg, it wasn't likely a public brick arch system. It was probably built as a private drainage for that property. So it wasn't shown on any of their as-built for the property, and we didn't have any record of it in the public system. And then DOT didn't have any record of it under the interstate, probably because it preceded the interstate.
How big is it?
It was a smaller arch, probably like 2 by 3 instead of one of the larger arches.
Okay.
It was pretty much completely sediment in. We did finally find the end, and it was completely buried in the marsh. So it certainly wasn't working very well from a drainage perspective, which might explain some of the flooding we see on the site.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the committee on this one?
Move
for approval.
All right. Probably moved and seconded. Any discussions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? J2. What was J2? Wasn't it?
J3.
J3, I've got you.
Yeah, thanks for Chairman. So this is just a brief update in Concord and Cumberland, and that we're going to likely bring a change order for that project to the Ways and Means at the first September meeting. Won't have another Public Works Utilities Committee meeting before that. This is one of our very small projects. We're replacing an outfall near Fleet Landing, near the intersection of Concord and Cumberland, where there's a crushed pipe that's preventing that area from draining. It's a small project that was under council approval thresholds, so we did competitively procure it. This change order will likely be for probably just under $20,000, which will push it over the council procurement threshold, which will necessitate it coming back through Ways and Means. Basically, when we excavated the material, they found large granite blocks and ballast rock. So they have to take that material out and then replace it with flowable fill. So we need to increase the cost for the contractor to be able to remove that material, a little bit different than the soft soils they're typically working in, and then replace with flowable fill for the DOT roadway.
Okay, great.
We're finalizing those costs right now, which is why we don't have the documentation for this meeting.
So that's just the information, right?
Yes, and that project should be basically complete before our next Public Works Utilities meeting. So we'll want to process that change order as quickly as we can for the contractor.
All right, good deal. But there's no action step to be taken today.
That's correct. Just a heads up that it will be on
Okay.
the next Ways and
It'll
Means
be
meeting,
coming.
so it
Okay.
isn't. If there's any questions or anything that people would like to know when that agenda comes out, we'll be happy to talk to them about it in advance of the meeting, since it won't come to a Public Works Utilities meeting before that.
All right, J4.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a quick question before we vote?
Sure you can. Go ahead.
Hey, Matt, who's the contractor on that project? If you know.
I think it is Trula, Councilman Seegers, but I need to double check.
Okay, it's no big deal. I was just kind of wondering who's working in that area, because I think they're going to find more stuff when we get into the Union Pier area and find a lot of that.
Yeah, it is Trula, Councilman Seekins, and they're just about done. They've already finished the work and are starting to place back the surface work. It's just a short section of pipe that they were replacing.
Great.
And then
Thank you.
they cut through the wall in combination with Fleet Landing and the property owners of Fleet Landing, which are the waterfront hotel property, did an easement for that previously with Public Works Utilities Committee.
Okay, we move on to J4, Sweetgrass Creek Road. Project update, Mr. Fountain.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This one was requested by Councilmember Parker.
Right.
For an update. I think we had an initial update at the overview of the small projects. It's one of our small project allocation request projects, looking at outfall improvements and some improvements to drainage on the road. I think there were some requests she had from the neighborhood after that meeting. And I think the main update is that basically Charleston Water Systems is doing a small water line replacement project. We are also doing a project. I think the residents were hoping that we could combine those two projects together and also elevate the roadway to prevent tidal flooding in the area. This is a DOT roadway. DOT has been working with Charleston Water Systems on their permitting. We don't have funding in either of our projects to elevate the roadway or get approval from DOT at this point to do that. We will put that in as a separate conceptual evaluation for future analysis. It likely does need elevation at some point. As the tides continue to get higher. It's a very low lying section. We did talk to Charleston Water System about combining the projects. It doesn't look like they can wait with their timeline, where we have to go through our state and federal permitting for that outfall cleaning. But we're going to coordinate the two efforts together. DOT has coordinated with CWS to ask them to at least add an asphalt lift as part of their project rather than a mill and overlay to give it a little bit more height, a couple of inches additional height. And then our work will mostly be on the perimeter of the road. We did look at, could we speed up part of our project, but realistically we can't. It's a very tight, narrow roadway in this area. And if we both contractors were working at the same time, we'd likely have to shut the road, but it's the only access point to the neighbors who live further down the road. So you can't close the roadway. So I think we are going to separate into the two projects. We'll continue that education and outreach and engagement with the neighborhood to explain what we're doing and why we're doing it and try to limit impacts. But unfortunately, we can't do it quite as easily as they would have hoped.
Okay, Councilman
Understood.
Parker, any input or comments?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Sure can.
Okay, apologize for my technical difficulties today. Well, thank you, Mr. Fountain, and thank you for adding this to the agenda. I know, I mean, you have done such a great job in getting this, and even all my fellow colleagues, just getting that permit for this particular outfall. I think it's been 8 years. You know, this was a really long time in the process. So you guys are doing such phenomenal work out there. And this is, again, very typical and similar to these James Island projects, these multi-jurisdictional pitfalls that we hit, right? No pun intended. Like if we clear an outfall, but it's not our ditch and it's someone else's road, I mean, these cross-jurisdictional projects can just be super frustrating. And obviously, I think from a citizen perspective, it's definitely even more frustrating, you know, and now understanding it sort of at a deeper level, like some of us do, it's frustrating, but we understand. So I guess I asked that it be placed on the agenda. Just, I know your team is obviously with your explanation, like CWS has already made some considerations and SCDOT possibly, you know, or I think it was CWS elevating that asphalt. But, you know, if there was just another set of eyes, any other way that we can, because is it worth, you know, when we fund these projects, when we're doing an outfall cleaning like this, I think I brought this up a while ago. It's if we do one piece, is it really going to solve the problem? So then we're spending the money and it's not going to solve the problem. Does that make sense, that question?
It does. This one, I mean, you're correct that we will be improving the drainage on the road. It will be draining out much quicker. It will not prevent any potential for tidal flooding with the elevation the road was constructed at. So that is a potential follow-on project, but the drainage improvements won't work against a future tidal improvement like they would work in either situation. So I think you're right that we need to make sure we're considering what are potential future projects and how do we coordinate with other entities to make sure we're getting the maximum leverage we can. And I think that's something that does have value on every project.
Oh, sure. And you guys do a great job with that. And I think you just answered my question there, is that was my fear, hearing from the constituents, is that, you know, we're going to do this great work back there and it might not bring a resolution like we had hoped. But it sounds like you said, it's going to help with the drainage. It's going to help with the drainage. And then again, I really need to just lean on our state, you know, our legislative body and SCDOT this would be a great time for those reps and those involved to maybe speed up their process, since we're doing a project back there. But well, I just appreciate you kind of explaining that to me once again, and that way, if constituents have further questions, it sounds like you guys are doing even more outreach. So I think that'll answer all of their questions. And thanks again. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Council Lady. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think we've already taken care of items K1 through 5. All right. Any miscellaneous information to come? Mr. Fountain, did you have any update on Montclair Drive?
Yeah, I did, Mr. Chairman. So for Montclair was another area we had looked at for drainage improvement. This is sort of along, as you know, that U-shaped lake that sits by Ashley Hall and Woodmere and Montclair. We used field ops to restore a maintenance access road from Woodmere into that lake. We removed quite a bit of blockage and debris that accumulated along a utility line that sits in that lake so that the entire lake can be used for storage by the stormwater flowing into it. And then we have, as a potential small project for next year's funding, to look at, could we improve the outfall structure that sits next to and then flows under that roadway into the Martian River. I think that's going to be your next major improvement, Mr. Chairman, and that is something we're recommending for us, potential small project for next year.
Well, let me ask this. You know, obviously they had quite a bit of silting, primarily, I guess, on the Montclair side. What's the thinking on that? I mean, I think some years ago that thing used to be like, I don't know, 4 or 5 feet deep, and now it's 15 inches.
Yeah, from a pure stormwater perspective, anything we excavate below the water elevation doesn't add any storage. There certainly is a ecological benefit perspective. You get it deeper, you get less mosquitoes, you get better avoidance of vegetation growth, but you don't improve the stormwater storage directly. So I know the Parks Department, I think, and the city were acquiring some of the property in that area. We have not looked at a dredging type project because there is some ecological permitting associated with that and not a direct stormwater benefit. We've leaned more towards the outfall structure, but that is something that the city could potentially look at.
Well, let me ask this. I think there's I'm gonna call it an inlet from Wallenberg. So if you're coming from 61 on Wallenberg, I think just as you get to South Pine Point, I think there's a inlet there that causes water to come off of Wallenberg into that lake. And
That's right.
eventually continues on behind those yards off of Montclair and eventually, underneath Ashley Hall Road and out to the, hopefully Ashley. I'm thinking that's where some of that silting came in from decades ago. So that actually channels some of the water off of, Highway 61 down Wallenberg, eventually out to the Ashley.
That's right. Absolutely. There's a riser structure in that outfall that I think was meant to keep some level of water in the lake structure. So that's what we're trying to look at. Could we modify that? Could we get the lake to start draining the lower elevation and not have as much head backing up onto Raoul Wallenberg and some of the upstream area? So I think that's definitely got some opportunity to do improvement in that area.
Okay. All right. When we get a chance, we look at some of that and report out later on. Okay. All righty. With that, unless we have any final comments with acclamation, we'll stand adjourned. Look forward to seeing you all tomorrow.